the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccer Files Canada. Welcome to Series 20, the 2023 African Cup. This episode is part 2 on the players of Egypt, final selections. Here we go. Hello and welcome back to the International Soccer Preview by Soccer Files Canada. We are back for part 2 of our mediacast on the players of the 2023 African Cup. This episode deals with the final selections of Egypt. In part 1, we compiled a list of players and their likelihood of reaching the final squad. That was based mostly on their participation over the past 2 years, and we considered a few other factors as well. In fact, we ran out of time to do part 2 for some of the teams of the African Cup. So today we're going back to review that to complete the collection, as it were. The tournament has been played by this point, but we're going to take the perspective of just before the tournament here, as if we were doing the media cast when we intended to. This media cast is divided into 3 sections. Section 1 is just short with some preliminary information, including a look at the games played after we did part 1. Section 2 is the main part of the media cast, a review of the lineup that was released, which we will compare to the list that we compiled in part 1. And in section 3, we will review new players, surprise selections, non-selections, and injuries. And we'll end with a revised list of who we think will be the starters. Now, just a quick word on our future plans. In the fall of 2024, we had hoped to review qualification for World Cup and other tournaments like the next African Cup, which is at the end of 2025. We were a bit ambitious there, and we're going to put off until spring 2025 the updates on qualification. But stay tuned for a more detailed update once we've decided what we can do. Okay, let's jump right in with section 1. Just a couple of notes. First of all, the squad. Teams were allowed to bring 27 players to the squad. They actually changed that decision in mid-December, raising it from 23 to 27. So we're looking for 27 here. Egypt put together a 55-man preliminary squad. So that means they had to cut 28 players to create the final squad. Let's look at some of the games. We'll look at this throughout section 2 to see who actually started these games. But we had 2 World Cup qualifiers in November. Egypt played Djibouti and Sierra Leone in those games, and then 1 pre-tournament friendly for Egypt, and that was against Tanzania. We're not so much interested in the results of those games as in the lineups of the games. All right, let's go on to the main part of the media cast. We've already put here our list that we created in part 1. I've removed highlights. We did talk about who we thought was going to start during that media cast, but we're going to do that at the end here, or maybe as we go, we'll make comments on it, but mostly we're just looking at who has been selected. So as far as manager goes, Victoria Rui, sorry, I keep getting that wrong. Rui Victoria is the manager who will be leading them through the cup. So we'll treat him here as a player that's been selected, and we'll move on to goalkeepers. So we had 2 definite candidates, Mohamed El Shanawi and Mohamed Sobi. Both of those made it to the squad. We're highlighting them in green here on the YouTube graphic for those who are watching there. So those 2 selected for the final squad. We had a likely candidate in Mohamed Abu Gabal. He often goes by the nickname Gabaski, and he was selected for the squad. And in fact, Egypt brought 4 goalkeepers, so we thought our possible candidate, Ahmed Nasser El-Shanawi, would not make the squad, but because they're bringing 4, he did make the squad. So we have 4 goalkeepers. I'll summarize those in a minute. We had we did have players at the possible but unlikely or seemingly off the squad level, but we're not going to talk about them if they didn't make the final squad. Some of them did make the 55-man preliminary list there. So let's summarize our definite candidates: Mohammed El Shanawi, Mohammed Sobi, likely candidate Mohammed Abu Gabal, and possible candidate Ahmed Nasser El Shanawi, same as the definite goalkeeper, his last name. Let's look at the games there. So in November, against Djibouti, it was the player that we think is going to be the starter, Mohammed El Shanawi, and he started both of those games in November. However, in the friendly prior to the tournament, it was the other definite candidate, Mohammed Sobi, getting a start. But we feel he was just given some field time there, and that Mohammed El Shanawi will be the starter. Okay, let's move on to defenders and central defense. So we had a definite candidate in Mohamed Abdelmonem, and he was selected for the squad. Likely candidate Ali Gaber, also selected for the squad. We had three possible candidates there: Ahmed Hegazi, Yasser Ibrahim, and Ahmed Sami. Ahmed Hegazi was selected for the squad. And Ahmed Sami was also selected for the squad. Initially, Yasser Ibrahim was not selected for the squad. Rather, Osama Galal, who we didn't introduce last time, but we did have him on our list as a possible but unlikely player. Osama Galal was selected. However, he withdrew after the final selection and was replaced by Ibrahim Yasser. We'll highlight him in yellow here to indicate that he was not an initial selection, but came back in to the squad. So those are the central defenders. Let's take a look at the lineups to see what they use. So in terms of lineup formation, it was a strange 4-1-3-2 in the first game against Djibouti, and then they went back to the formation that they used in the previous African Cup, a 4-3-3. They didn't always use that over the past 2 years, but that does seem to be their favorite formation. Against Djibouti, it was our definite candidate Mohammed Abdelmonem on one side, and possible candidate Ahmed Sami on the other. Abdelmonem played the second game too, but Sami was replaced by the likely candidate Ali Gaber in the second game. And then in the third game, again, Abdelmonem, so he played all three, and this time flanked by Ahmed Hegazi. So, well, we can say there that it looks like for sure Mohammed Abdelmonem will be a starter, but they seem quite undecided on who will partner him there. So we'll have to wait till the Cup to see three different candidates used here. All right, on to left backs. We had a definite candidate in Mohammed Hamdi. And he was selected for the squad. We also had a likely candidate in Ahmed Abu Al-Futu, and he also was selected for the squad. So we're not getting many surprises in the selections here. This is what we expected. And we'll do the right backs before we take a look at the recent game. So just two left backs being brought there. The same is true on the right. In this case, we had two candidates on our list, but both at the likely level. So the first one was Mohammed Hani, and not to be confused with the left back Mohammed Hamdi. This is Mohammed Hani. And the other one, the other likely candidate was Omar Kamal. He too was selected. So again, all sorts of candidates at the possible but unlikely level or lower were selected for the preliminary squad, but we won't trouble with that in our podcast or our media cast here. Now let's take a look and see who played as left back and right back. in the recent games. So on the left was not the definite candidate Mohammed Handi, but rather the likely one, Ahmed Abu Al Fatu, playing in that first game against Djibouti. But Mohammed Handi did come in for the second game against Sierra Leone. In the friendly, pre-tournament friendly, though, they went back to Ahmed Abu El Futu. So it almost looks like maybe a rotation of the two of them, or El Futu kind of now looking slightly more likely than Hamdi. On the right side, we have Omar Kamal playing the first game, Mohammed Hani playing the second game, and Omar Kamal playing the third game. So there too, perhaps a rotation, but Omar Kamal looking slightly more likely there. Okay, that is the defense. Let's move on to the midfield. And we're going to treat defensive midfielders and central midfielders same here. So we'll go through both of them before we look at the games. And here we had a definite candidate for a defensive midfielder in Mohamed El Neni. And he was selected for the squad. And we had really our only surprise here, likely candidate Tariq Ahmed. Not selected for the squad. He did start 6 of their 13 games after September 2022. He was off the squad for a while, but returned at that time, started 6 of their remaining 13 games, as well as subbing in for 2 and on the bench for 1. So just 2 games that he hadn't been selected for. We had considered him a likely candidate. He wasn't even named to the 55-man preliminary squad, so we're not really sure what is going on with that, but Tariq Hamdi not even close to the team for this tournament. The other likely candidate was Marwin Atia, and he was selected for the squad. We also had a possible candidate I think I introduced him in part 1 as Ahmed Kuka. I now see him more often named as Ahmed Nabil Koka, perhaps to distinguish him from the other player who's nicknamed on the squad there. Well, he was selected for the final squad. However, he withdrew after final selection, and he was replaced by Mohana Lashin, who we're going to meet shortly as a central midfielder. So Ahmed Nabil Koka selected, but ruled out injured and not part of the squad here. Let's take a look at the candidates we had for central midfield. And we had a definite, 2 definite candidates, in fact, in Hamdi Fathi and another one in Zizo. He seems to be going by the name Zizo more now. We also have him listed as Ahmed Saeed. Anyway, both of those players, Fathi and Zizo, making the squad, making the final selection. We had a likely candidate in Mahmoud Hamada, and he was selected also. And we had a possible candidate in Imam Ashur, and he too was selected. We had Mohamed Lashin as a possible but unlikely candidate. I can't remember why we put him on the list, because we usually didn't put possible but unlikely candidates on the list. He hadn't been selected for the last 6 games up until the time we did part 1 of the mediacast, but as we saw, he was not selected, but then recalled to replace Koka there, Ahmed Nabil Koka. So he is selected, and it was very clever of us to put him on the list. Again, I can't remember why we did it, but that worked out nicely. Just a note here, captain of Ipswich, the team that was promoted to the English League this time, is Sam Morsey, and he had been a possible but unlikely candidate. He was selected for the preliminary squad, but didn't make it. So that's actually a fairly big name left off the squad here. Well, not really left off, because he hasn't been part of the national team in tournaments since 2018 World Cup. But anyway, Sam Morsey not selected here. Now we have our central and defensive midfielders. I think actually I'm going to do the left and right midfielders here because we don't have many of them. In fact, we had no candidates coded as left midfield, and we only had one coded as a right midfielder. That was Hussein El Shahat. And Hussein El Shahat made the preliminary squad, but not the final squad. So the entire midfield will be made up of defensive and central midfielders on our list here. Now we can go and look at who that was. Again, a strange formation of the 4-1-2-3 here. And what we have here playing as a stopper is Atia. Marwan Atia, we had as a likely defensive midfield. There he is playing as a defensive midfielder. And then the three ahead of him on the left is Zizo, in the middle El Neni, and on the right is actually forward Omar Mamouche. We will meet him soon. But not one of the players we're talking about here. The second game is a more regular 4-2-2. Once again, we have Zizo and El Neni. And here we have Hamdi Fati, the definite central midfielder on our list. Again, El Neni was a definite defensive midfielder, and Zizo a definite central midfielder. So they are going with the players that we expected, the ones high up on our list. However, that's not so much the case with the friendly against Tanzania. We do see Mohamed El Neni there again, so we can be fairly sure he'll be a starter. And it does seem to be that they're trying out some new players in the pre-tournament friendly. We have Imam Ashur, the possible candidate on our list, and Marwan Atia, the likely candidate defensive midfielder. So a few of the players that we think will actually be supporting cast in the cup used there in the friendly, but we'll see. Maybe this is an indication that they are moving toward a starting position. Okay, that is it for the kind of the I'll say the defensive part of the midfield, because what we're going to do now, in the previous mediacast in part one, we termed these players as left wingers and right wingers, but over the course of doing more of the podcast, we just kind of created a category of left attacking midfield and right attacking midfield. In both cases, that encompasses wingers, attacking midfielders on one side, and even forwards in a three-man lineup. So it'll be the left forward and the right forward of a three-man lineup. We found that more convenient to work. So let's talk in those terms. We're looking at left attacking midfielders here, and we had a definite candidate in part one in Omar Marmouche. We just met him there playing as a right midfielder in the first game against Djibouti, but in fact he's coded as a forward, and in part one of the mediacast we moved him to left attacking midfield. I think we said generally when it's a forward position, three-man forward line, it'll be him. And when it's something like a 4-2-3-1, a left attacking midfield position, it's the other candidate on our list, Mahmoud Trezeguet, sometimes just called Trezeguet. So those are the two candidates on our list: definite candidate Omar Marmouche and likely candidate Mahmoud Trezeguet there. And let's go over to the right before we look at what they played, who they played in the games. On the right, we had a definite candidate in Mohamed Salah, who needs no introduction, and a likely candidate in Mustafa Fati. So those were the only ones on our list. Let's see. Oh, I forgot to say who made it. Well, all of them did. On the left, Omar Marmouche was selected, and Mahmoud Trezeguet. And no other candidates. A few made it to the preliminary squad, but we don't cover that here. Mohamed Salah is actually the captain of the team, and he was selected, of course. And the other one, Mustafa Fati, our likely candidate, also selected for the squad. Okay, let's take a look at the recent games to see who lined up. So in in the strange 4-1-3-2, we have Mohamed Salah playing actually as a left forward, a left co-forward there. And I might add that he scored 4 goals in that game. And the other one was a forward who we'll meet soon. So again, we did see Omar Mamouche playing as a right midfielder. So 2 of our candidates playing but out of position there. Let's see if it becomes a bit more regular with the Sierra Leone game, the second game they played. We do see Trezeguet. This is a 4-3-3, so we're talking about left forward and right forward. It was Trezeguet, but as a right forward, we have him as a left attacking midfielder, and Mohamed Salah playing on the left again. So basically the players we expect, but just switching positions there, switching sides on the field. But in the game against Tanzania, more what we expected. This time it is a 3-man forward line with Trezeguet on the left and Mohamed Salah on the right there. So it looks like Trezeguet kind of beating out Omar Marmouche. We would have expected Marmouche in the 4-3-3 lineup, but nevertheless looks like perhaps a bit of a rotation among them. But now we would favour Trezeguet as a starter, and Mohamed Salah. No room for the likely candidate Mustafa Bati, because as in the 2 years leading up to the Cup, Mohamed Salah almost always used. Okay, that leaves us with the forwards to do. I think actually we have one attacking midfielder that we introduced last time. No, we didn't introduce him because he was seemingly off the squad. So we didn't introduce any attacking midfielders in part 1. Neither do they have any secondary strikers or players coded as secondary strikers. So we moved straight to forwards, and we had a definite candidate in Mohamed Mustafa, who was selected for the squad. We had no likely candidates here, but 3 possible candidates. The first one, Ahmed Hassan. Oh, he's in a different order on my list. Anyway, let me introduce the 3 candidates: Mohammed Sharif, Marwan Hamdi, and Ahmed Hassan. But they actually came in reverse order there. Almost. Mohammed Sharif made it to the preliminary squad, but didn't make the final cut there. Marwan Hamdi didn't even make the big 55-man preliminary squad. So it is only Ahmed Hassan among our 3 possible candidates who was selected for the squad. However, we do have one surprise here. We did have him as a possible but unlikely candidate, and that is Karaba or Mahmoud Karaba, who was selected for the squad. He actually did play in the 2017 African Cup and the 2018 World Cup. He was a sub in both of those, but wasn't selected for the last 2 African Cups in 2019 and 2021. He returned, though, after a 3-year absence, an almost 3-year absence, in March of 2023, and started one of their 10 games and subbed in for 2, was on the bench for 1, and then dropped off the team again, not selected for the last 6 matches. So that's why we had him as possible but unlikely. But lo and behold, here he is making a comeback to the team and selected for this tournament. Okay, that is forwards, and let's go back and look at the games. As we saw, it was a 2-man forward line against Djibouti. Mohamed Salah, the scorer of 4 goals, 1 of them, and our definite forward Mustafa Mohamed playing alongside him up there. So no surprise there. In the second game, the centre forward of the 3-man forward line was Mustafa Mohamed, and that was the case too in their game against Tanzania. So we can say with pretty good confidence there that Mustafa Mohamed will be a starter. Okay, that is the end of the main part 2. Let's move on to section 3. Section 3, there we are. So we'll just go through any notable non-selections first. We have Tariq Hamed, who we had as a likely candidate. but he was not selected for the squad. We won't go through why we thought he was likely again, but there we have it. We have two surprise inclusions. Well, one of them was Osama Galal. He was a possible but unlikely candidate, but he was selected for the squad before he withdrew due to injury. The other surprise is the forward Mahmoud Karaba. Karaba is means electricity, apparently, and that is a nickname, but that seems to be what he's known by. As far as the replacements go, Yasser Ibrahim, who replaced Osama Galal, there was not a surprise inclusion. We had him as a possible candidate, and so he was a kind of a logical replacement. However, the replacement for Ahmed Nabil Koka was a surprise, or something of a surprise. We had him as a possible but unlikely candidate, and that is Mohamed Lashin. However, he did play in the 2021 African Cup. He was a sub. He had just not been selected for the last 6 matches prior to when we did part 1, so we had considered him unlikely. But he was recalled. So not so much of a surprise given that he was a recall. Okay, let's move on to injuries. And actually, we didn't have any injuries of note when we did part 1. So we will just take a look at the 2 players who withdrew from the squad there and mention that they are out injured. The first one again, Osama Galal, the central defender, and the other one, Ahmed Nabil Koka. Both of those players dropped due to injury after having been selected. Okay, that's all we have to say about injuries. So we're going to move on to review, the spotlight review. I don't even know why we call it that anymore, but it has a nice ring to it. We did that at the end of part 1, kind of for fun, and now we're going to kind of do it again. Just to kind of review what we said. So we didn't think manager Rio Vittoria would be fired before the sorry, I just need to do something for my graphics here. We didn't think he would be fired before the tournament, and he wasn't, so we would consider him a definite candidate. We're reinforced in our belief that Mohamed El Shanawi will be the starter. He started 2 of the 3, or both of the World Cup qualifiers in November. It was Mohamed Sobi that started the friendly, but we don't consider that a strong threat to El Shanawi, so we stay with him as the starter. In central defense, we saw Mohamed Abdel Monem. We had nominated him as the starter, and he started all 3 of the games prior to the cup here, so we retained him as our starter. We did put Ali Gabber as the most likely player playing alongside of him. Now our doubt is shaken because 3 separate players played, so we're going to remove him from the list, and we'll say it's Mohamed Abdel Monem plus one of 3 other candidates playing alongside him. It'll be interesting to see. For left back position, we couldn't decide between Mohamed Hamdi and Ahmed Abu Futu. We thought perhaps a rotation. Now well, we still feel the same way, a rotation, but we would say Al Futu has a slight edge, having played 2 of the 3 games there, last 3 games. So we will just move him ahead on the list of Mohamed Hamdi. But it could be either or both of them. On the right, same situation, although here we had nominated Mohamed Hani. Now we have a little bit of doubt because he only started 1 of the last 3 games, and it was Omar Kamal starting the other. So we're going to do the same thing we did on the left and put both of them in blue. So let's change Mohamed Hamdi to green and actually add Al Futu ahead of him because we are now slightly favoring, sorry, not Al Futu, but Omar Kamal. We are slightly favoring Omar Kamal now, having played 2 of the last 3. But again, we kind of think a rotation or one or the other. In central midfield, we put 4 different players as kind of possible. We couldn't really decide on a starter, but now we do think Mohamed El Neni is a definite starter. And among the other 3, Hamdi Fathi, Ahmed Saeed, Ozizo, and Mahmoud Hamada, we still kind of see a rotation, but we would slightly favor Zizo among the 3 of them to play alongside El Neni, and then a rotation for the 3rd position there. On the left wing, or I should say left attacking midfield, we did have a kind of both Omar Marmoush and Mahmoud Trezeguet, either as a rotation or one or the other. We still see it that way, actually, but we see Trezeguet as slightly favoured now, having started 2 of the last 3. But definitely won't be surprised to see Marmoush popping up there. On the right side, we had Mohamed Salah as a definite, and we stick with that. That very much seems to be the case. We did see in the pre-game matches there that sometimes the left and the right attacking midfield switch sides or a bit of position rotation, but this is their regular position. On the forward line, we had Mustafa Mohamed as a definite candidate. He started all 3 of the pre-tournament games there, so we're sticking with that. That is our predicted starter. Now we just have to see what happens in game 1. Sometimes we find out that we're completely wrong, but this is our best guess right now. So thank you for listening. This is part 2 of the selections for Egypt. So there we have the selections, and I hope you enjoyed that, and we will see you next time. We would like to thank Pixabay and Alexei Ivanov of Mappa Music for the wonderful background music accompanying this mediacast.